What is going on, Chelsea fans? Welcome back to the channel. We are looking absolutely brilliant at the moment. I have to say that was probably one of Chelsea's best performances under Enzo Maresca, under the new ownership in definitely this season and probably the last sort of 3 seasons. That's really up there for me. What a fantastic performance. Just all round, that it's very difficult to sort of criticize anyone off the back of that performance. I thought we were very, very good against a Villa side that have been, I mean, in recent weeks, not great, but definitely a team that have definitely tested some of the better sides in Europe this season. We've seen that Villa side beat Bayern Munich. We know that on their day, they're a very good side. And Chelsea ultimately at home haven't been formidable this season, but we made Stamford Bridge look like a fortress yesterday. We made it look like it would be an incredibly difficult place for any team to come to and potentially get a result. And I feel like this Chelsea side right now are really growing in to what looks like one of the former sort of Chelsea sides of the past. I'm starting to see leaners. I'm starting to see match winners. I'm starting to be able to rely and trust on certain players to step up in the moments that it's needed. Villa did look way below their level. I have to agree. Big up to everyone coming in. I'm glad we can all be happy with that result. Yeah, look, Villa didn't look great, but ultimately we could have not turned up yesterday. You know, we've had draws off the back of our European games, or when we've rotated the squad. And yesterday we looked like we were a threat every time we went forward. I have to say that Enzo Maresca has got a lot right with his squad yesterday and with the players that he decided to play. And I mean, I said it a couple of weeks ago that I wondered if there was a way to potentially put one more attacker on the pitch and play a person further forwards and maybe not have Cucurella invert and have someone else invert who can play in midfield and be more of a threat. And yesterday, Maresca tried that with Casado, and look, it absolutely worked. We flourished yesterday in terms of our attacking football. Our output was brilliant. We scored 3 goals. I mean, we controlled that game for the majority of that game. Villa had what? 2, 3 moments where they put the ball over the top. And I mean, there was that one where Fofana obviously slipped. And obviously that was a chance for Villa to get a goal at 1-0 and they would have been level. And obviously Sanchez, of all people, steps up and makes a fantastic save. Gerald says, you said it was fair to call us flat track bullies on FT. Do you take it back now? No, I don't, because I think if you look at who we've beaten this season, bar obviously Villa, I mean, we've beaten Newcastle. They're not having a great season. Villa are in a really poor run of form. I think Brighton are probably the only team that have sort of improved since we beat them. West Ham have been rubbish. Wolves haven't had a good season. I think Chelsea, in order to go and win the title or really establish themselves as a serious team, have to win the games that we haven't this season. You know, when we've drawn with Arsenal, which we could have potentially done better in that game. Manchester United definitely should have won that. When you see how we played against Villa, I think this Chelsea team have sort of shown yesterday that's the standard. I mean, I look at a player like Enzo Fernandez. For months and weeks, he's been below par in terms of performances. And just recently, I'd probably say since the Panathinaikos game, we've really started to see him improve. And I felt like yesterday, that is the most I've seen Enzo Fernandez get around a pitch and be dynamic and not struggle with the intensity since he's worn a Chelsea shirt, actually. So I have to say, I'm super impressed with that. And I think that yesterday looked like the Enzo Fernandez we all expected we would be signing. That is the Enzo Fernandez that most of us saw at the World Cup. Most of us know that there was a player in there, but we were just starting to think, when are we ever going to see this? Is the Premier League really too intense? Well, the way he dealt with yesterday's game, that is when Enzo Fernandez looks like he's fit enough and he's sharp enough to absolutely deal with the Premier League. And he got his goal yesterday and he's in fantastic form. And I have to say, long may that continue. And well done to the coaching staff and Enzo Fernandez for making performances like that a little bit more common in recent weeks. RC says, can't believe what I was hearing by other platforms on here yesterday. Our fans treating Southampton game like it's a Conference League game, all saying we should rotate players. Drove me mad hearing it. Look, I think there's an option for a couple of players to rotate just to sort of maintain players getting minutes and obviously to make sure players are being managed in terms of injuries, because I think there's something to be said that Madueke will probably start that game against Southampton, because I'm not sure whether Pedro Neto is the type of player that can play 2 games in a week with his injury history. As much as Pedro Neto looks fantastic, that's the sort of rotation I wouldn't be shocked at. But I expect Nicholas Jackson to start. I expect Cole Palmer to start. I expect Levi Colwell to start. I expect all of our sort of spine, Casado, I expect him to start. I feel like he's a player that can definitely play multiple games, multiple times in a week. Enzo Fernandez, I'm not so sure. Lavia, I'm not so sure how that will look. But yeah, I don't expect to see 11 changes like we've seen with the Conference League. I just don't. I don't think that would be the right approach. Southampton aren't a fantastic team by any means, but they are proven to be a really difficult side to play against for some teams, and we don't know where we'll fall into that category. Personally, I think for that game against Southampton, obviously now we found out about Fofana being injured, we'll probably see Badashile, right? Gerald, this is true as well. We've got some issues with bookings. It is indeed. It's the represent collab. And who are you starting next to Colwell? Yeah, well, probably would say Badashile off of recent evidence. I think he's been okay. I mean, if Badashile does start against Southampton, he's definitely started to play in a number of games in a row, and he's definitely looking like a player that's improved as well. And I think this shows that when the pressure's off a little bit and Chelsea are moving in the right direction, and everyone's starting to thrive, everyone's starting to make it look more like a team, and we're playing well, and the manager's doing a good job of keeping everyone happy, which he is. I have to commend him, because I don't think he's been in this situation before, and he is doing a good job. And it gets a lot harder if we get to the Champions League. I think actually he's doing okay. Now, I know why you're saying this, because of that one pass, but other than that, I don't think Badashile was as bad as we've seen him be in other games. I don't know who we play instead of him, though. I'll be real. I don't know who we play instead of Badashile if he isn't to play. Maybe Tosin. Do we think Tosin gets an opportunity on the right side of the defence? Maybe. I mean, it's not like he hasn't played Premier League football before. He's played for Fulham, and he's not really been given the minutes he probably thought he might get at Chelsea this season. I mean, I was chatting to Charlie about it, Blue Brother, the other day, that we almost think, is there a chance that Tosin's fallen behind Badashile in the pecking order, and potentially they could look at moving him on in the summer? I mean, I don't know, but it's instant profit, isn't it? Because we signed him on a free transfer. That's what everyone else said. Neto shouldn't start. Yeah, I think with Neto, I think he's had so many injuries. I don't think we want to risk seeing him get injured again. I think we want to. We know how good he looks. I mean, Neto looks absolutely fantastic. Yesterday, watching him switch wings with ease against Arsenal, he did the same. It's so easy for him to either apply himself to the left wing and work his cross, or go onto the right and work a shot. He's the perfect sort of winger. I don't know how many of you will remember this, but back in the days of Duff and Robin, Pedro Neto would have fitted into the Damien Duff role absolutely perfectly. He's not what Robben was. He's not. Robben was special. We all know that. But Pedro Neto is a fantastic, not a fully old school winger, but of that sort of caliber of a Damien Duffy. There's elements to it where he'll beat his man and work his cross, and he won't turn around and pass it back. He'll deliver the ball into a dangerous area, or if he's cutting in from the right-hand side, he'll cut back inside and work his shot, work an opportunity, work a little dink to the back post. He's a great player to watch. It's so refreshing seeing a winger like that, because how many wingers have we got in the team or have had in recent years, and you see around the Prem and other leagues, that will beat their man, turn around and pass the ball back in an attempt to retain possession. And Pedro Neto is a breath of fresh air. And I think ultimately with his injury history, we have to be protecting him. And that's the only thing. Tosin, that's what I actually thought yesterday when we see Fofana go down, that would have been the obvious change. But obviously Badashile came on and didn't do much wrong. But ultimately he didn't really have much to do against what I thought was a very poor Villa side and an Ollie Watkins that really did look out of form, not very sharp. I mean, a lot of Villa's players definitely fitted that category yesterday of not looking sharp, not looking very good. But we looked fantastic yesterday. And it started off with a goal inside the first 10 minutes, which was, I mean, the finish from Nicholas Jackson was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we are starting to be able to count on this guy every single game. Every game that Nicholas Jackson plays, he looks like he's capable of scoring a goal, if not two, if not three. And he looks absolutely fantastic. Theo, how we doing, my man? Good to have you in here. He really is sort of developing into the player that I think a lot of us thought we would need and require to go and buy from the transfer market. I don't think most of us thought Nicholas Jackson was going to become this player. And ultimately, 12, 15 games into the season, the numbers he's putting up are very, very good. Chelsea look like we've almost removed the striker issue in terms of needing a player to be better than Nicholas Jackson. We almost just need someone to back up and support Nicholas Jackson now because we're a little bit light there on numbers, and Nkunku quite obviously doesn't want to play there. And Nkunku, for me, is a player that I think can play on the pitch at the same time as Nicholas Jackson. I absolutely don't think Nkunku should be in Jackson's role whatsoever. I think that we've seen in pre-season and we've seen in moments where Nkunku can play with a striker, especially in his previous team as well, and do really, really well. And I think it adds an extra element of a goal threat to the team. But ultimately, I don't think Maresca sees it that way. I don't think Nkunku's going to get that opportunity. It's frustrating, and I feel a little bit sorry for Nkunku. But Nicholas Jackson is making life very difficult for any sort of striker that's attempting to play ahead of him. And that's what you want a striker to do. You want a striker to be a main man, especially at Chelsea. You want that striker to be a bit arrogant and overconfident, like Didier Drogba, like Diego Costa. They're the players that thrive in that role. And I think Nico is really starting to form into that player. And yesterday, I mean, the standing ovation he got when he got bought off, Stamford Bridge was chanting Nico, Nico. That is a player that has absolutely won Stamford Bridge over, and that can, I mean, Stamford Bridge can build a player up and turn them into something really special. We've seen that like with the players that I've mentioned, and Nico is going that way. Matt, I have to agree with you on that. I don't think there's a shout for Nkunku to be playing ahead of Jackson at all. Yeah, and I think that's coming right. The Chelsea boy makes the point that Jackson needs to have better decision making, and he'll be a class player. I think the decision-making has come on leaps and bounds from last season. And I think that's why we're seeing Jackson, what is Nicholas Jackson now? Is he the third top scorer in the Premier League behind Salah and probably Haaland? I think Cole Palmer's probably level on goals, but he's doing very, very well. You absolutely have to praise him. He's improved so much. Said this yesterday, got backlash, don't care. Said Fofana's out for weeks. Maybe miss. No, I'll be honest, right? I actually thought that was probably Wesley Fofana's best game. I understand where you're coming from saying that there's a potential liability there. And yes, he got very unlucky. I mean, he tried to win the ball. You have to remember, Ollie Watkins is a good player and scored a lot of goals, but really didn't look at it yesterday. And I think he got lucky with that opportunity. But thankfully, Sanchez was alert to the situation and actually made a really good save. And Fofana did get away with it. Yes, I agree. But we've seen players make mistakes like that in the past. We've seen Badashile make mistakes and a team go on to score from it. I think maybe like Brentford last year, Badashile made a mistake, and we really struggled to see the best of him for quite some time after that mistake because his confidence was absolutely shot. What I think Fofana did really well yesterday was after that mistake, he still caused Aston Villa a lot of issues. That the ball they were looking for over the top was completely nullified 9 times out of 10 because Wesley Fofana's recovery pace is absolutely exceptional, and he dealt with those passes over the top, and he dealt with the speed of Ollie Watkins in behind, and he actually allowed Chelsea to play in a way. not dissimilar to how Ange and his Tottenham side play, where they can push that line up a little bit higher and apply more pressure to Aston Villa and then recover with so much pace that ultimately it can be very, very difficult for a team to deal with when they've got players that quick in the 1v1 and that comfortable defending and facing their own goal, like Wesley Fofana did on the majority of occasions yesterday. However, he then got himself injured, and it looks like a player like him is going to be out for quite some time now. I mean, there's suggestions saying 4 or 5 weeks, but I think we all know as Chelsea fans with Wesley Fofana's injury record that you take that news with a pinch of salt, and the likelihood is that that injury will be a little bit longer than we all think. It's very, very likely that we won't see Wesley Fofana until closer to February, in my honest opinion, which is really, really, really frustrating because I think we were starting to see Fofana move into a new vein of form that was starting to look like he was very capable defensively alongside Levi Colwill and really coming on. And he looked visibly upset yesterday when he was taken off. And a lot of the players came to comfort him. And he was very frustrated and very upset with that. And I think everyone could see that he was having quite a good game, bar the odd mistake. And do you know what? If a player makes a mistake and they don't learn from it or they don't improve or it knocks them so much that for weeks you can no longer trust them to play, that's when I think something has to be said about it. And I think there's an issue with it. But when a player makes a mistake and they can recover in that game or they learn from it and ultimately they don't make that mistake again, it makes them better. That's when I have a lot of respect and a lot of time for a player. And Wesley Fofana showed that yesterday, that he wasn't going to let that one mistake be the end of that battle. And ultimately, he looked very good. RC saying he made another mistake. That's when he got injured. That is when he got injured. He stepped on the ball. I don't think that was a mistake. I think it was just fluke that he accidentally stepped on the ball then. He's got injured because of that. He has made mistakes this season, but his performances aren't getting worse because of those mistakes. He made a mistake against Manchester City very early on. I haven't seen him attempt that again this season. I haven't seen him play that ball into the middle of the park that ultimately led to Kovacic's goal. I haven't seen that. Maximum potential says Enzo without defensive duties is the only way forward. I hear that. Yes, I think Enzo Fernandez yesterday showed a sort of dynamism that we haven't seen him show in a Chelsea shirt, in my opinion. I think he was really sort of light-footed and able to get around the pitch, and I don't think we've seen that from him. And long may that continue, because ultimately that's what we want to see from Enzo Fernandez, a player that is capable of living up to the Premier League. But, I mean, no one is wrong to suggest that Enzo Fernandez wasn't capable of dealing with the Premier League, because no one had any evidence to suggest otherwise. It looked like he was out of his depth for quite some time. And then in the last sort of few weeks, we've seen him really start to flourish and his numbers are looking a lot better. And I think he's looking very, very good. Gabriel says the only positive, if it can be cancelled, call that. Not any. Yeah, look, we don't know what the extent of that injury is, but the way he went off, the only positive was is the injury is separate to his history of knee injuries, right? And that hopefully is a positive. The only reason we don't know or we're not sure of how that injury is going to be is because of how distraught he looked going off. And the other thing is he knows the feeling that he's got in his body at that moment in time. And if he's had that before, or he's felt similar, he knows the battle he's had with his own body to get fit and be sharp and firing, because he would have wanted nothing more than to be fit throughout this Christmas period and play a number of games and be ready to go. Look, it probably won't be the case. And the ultimate thing is if Wes isn't fit and it looks like he's not going to be returning for a while, right, okay, so that's good, Matt. I've just seen you saying that he jogged down the tunnel. So hopefully he's okay. But if he isn't, and we don't know how that recovery goes, it might make you as a squad or as a set of sporting directors think about acting in January for a centre-back. Enzo pressing from the front, we have to talk about yesterday, because the way we pressed yesterday was so calculated, so energetic, that it almost made me it almost made me surprised in the fact that we tried to press a lot last season, right? And ultimately, that was one of Poch's main things, that we'd be relentless and we wouldn't stop working. But I don't think we ever pressed as good as we did yesterday under Pochettino, because Poch made it very clear that we wouldn't stop all game and we would run like that and we would eventually tire ourselves out. Yesterday, we went man for man and we were incredibly calculated, and the starting position for the press was so much better than what I saw at any point under Pochettino. I felt like as soon as Villa played out, they were under pressure from us. If one player went in, Jackson, Cole Palmer, Neto, Sancho, they all followed. Casado, Enzo Fernandez, they were all leading the press together, and it wasn't like one person would go and then they'd all follow. They were all well aware of what they had to do. And man for man across the pitch, we absolutely nullified Villa. And to carry that out successfully for the whole game is tremendous work. And you have to praise what's been going on the training pitch there, because it's difficult to do that. And it's very difficult to be played through. And I have to say, fair play, because we looked incredibly well drilled, organised, calculated in the press. I mean, Liverpool are the sort of team that are doing that this season. Whereas under Klopp, they were relentless. They would press all the time. And ultimately now I think we're seeing teams be so intent on keeping the ball and making these pressing teams work and work and work that eventually it just absolutely destroys them physically and they become worn out and tired. Whereas now you need to be a lot more calculated in your press and win the ball in areas that you believe it's possible to win the ball in, or win the ball at the maximum point of opportunity to win the ball. And that's what I think Chelsea did so well yesterday. Okay, yeah, great news. Enzo Fernandez knows you've got to press, work hard off the ball. Yeah, but we all know Enzo Fernandez knows that. And I think ultimately with some competition in the squad, he's probably upped his levels because he's aware that he isn't playing every single game and he can't be comfortable. But what I would say about Enzo is that yesterday he looked incredibly fresh and he looked fit and he looked sharp. And I think maybe last season he was injured a lot of the time. And then this season it's taken him quite some time to get going. But he's in the rhythm now and he looks fit and he looks like he can get about the pitch with a lot more ease than he's previously shown. I think we saw that yesterday. And really, really promising signs from him at the moment. Scoring goals, putting up assist numbers, work rate on and off the ball is fantastic. Getting into the positions that he actually can cause an issue for other teams. Very, very good from Enzo. Very, very good. Obviously, in terms of the weight between positive performances and negative ones, he's still got a lot of negative, unfortunately, not great performances in the bank, right? But moving in this direction makes me hope that he can leave that behind and really start to shine, because I think he, in recent weeks, has probably been that most improved player at Chelsea. I think he's been very, very good. And in a number of different positions, actually. A deeper line sort of playmaking role, and then he's been up towards the 10, where I think he's struggled at times. But in recent weeks, he really hasn't. I think we can definitely appreciate that, by the way. And I think we've probably known that that's been coming, haven't we? Because I think we've seen something in Pedro Neto that we haven't seen in Madueke. And I think that is probably a little bit less selfish, a little bit more willing to work for the team defensively. I mean, there was a moment yesterday on Tielemans where he battled with Tielemans. Tielemans got away from him and he went again and he won it. And I'm not saying Noni doesn't work hard. And there's been moments where I've really praised Noni for his defensive work rate. But for me, I think right now, Pedro Neto looks more like the finished article than Noni Madueke does. And Noni needs to keep working and thrive. And when given the opportunities, he needs to take it by the scruff of the neck and fight for his place in the team. Because Pedro Neto is versatile. He can play on either side. If Noni's performing well, he can fight himself back into that team. What I want to give credit to Maresca for yesterday is moving Cole Palmer. You know, a number of times in recent weeks since the Newcastle game, Cole Palmer's been in the 10, but the pocket of space he's been allowed to operate in has been just off to the left between the defensive team's sort of centre back and right back. He's been in that gap, in that pocket. And I think his games look really, I think it looked really limited in there. I think he wasn't sure what to do. Against Leicester, he moved a little bit more centrally because João Felix was obviously playing. And then yesterday against Villa, Enzo Fernandez played in that role that João Felix sort of did the other week. And Cole Palmer was able to operate off towards the right, closer to the right winger for Chelsea. And we saw him thrive. We saw him get an assist. We saw him get on the ball more. When he gets on the ball, he can turn. The pitch is open. He can see an array of options. He can run from that position and create, which we saw him do so many times last season. He can get a shot off from that position on his favoured left foot. We can see him cut inside, work an opportunity, and get a shot off that ultimately led to an unbelievable goal for him yesterday. He looks so much more comfortable operating just off to the right-hand side pocket than he does off to the left. And it's not like he's incapable off to the left. I just think off to the right, he looks a lot more like the Cole Palmer that we've got to know and love in the last couple of seasons. I think he's looked very, very good. Let's see what you guys have got to say about a couple of things. The press is organised now. Last season, the front four would go and Caicedo would be left alone. Now we see Levi, Cucurella join from the back when it's triggered. Jackson also cuts out horizontal passes. Yeah, I have to say, as a team, from front to back, off the ball, we looked very competent yesterday. I mean, how many times did you see the ball switch from, I'm not sure who was playing it, from deep for Villa, but they would play it out towards that space that Caicedo was inverting into and from at right back. And I think they sort of thought that was their opportunity. I mean, Caicedo on a number of occasions dealt with that ball easily. And then it allowed us to go and create an attack. And I thought in that role, he looked very capable. And then it allowed Lavia to be an option centrally. And it allowed Enzo Fernandez to push up and have a little bit less defensive responsibilities. And then Cucurella did so well at being narrow and operating in that sort of slightly more defensive sort of central role that we've seen him do at Brighton before in previous years under Graham Potter. And he coped with that. And at times, Levi was left on his own centrally and Fofana would just sort of drift out to the right, or Levi would be able to push on a little bit and Fofana would do the covering work in behind. We were allowed to play with a lot of freedom offensively yesterday. One, because of Villa and how poor they've been and how tired they were, but also because we took risks yesterday and they paid off. And I've been saying this, that I believe the quality is there in this team to be able to take those risks in certain games. I think if you do that against Manchester City, but if you do that against Liverpool, if you do that against a couple of other teams, Arsenal, you probably get hurt. You probably get damaged in that game and you probably don't do too well. But doing that against the likes of a team like Villa, who are really off the pace, you can absolutely thrive and go and win a game like we did yesterday and take it to them and score 3 goals and keep a clean sheet. And I mean, it looked easy for Levi Colwell at times yesterday because we were suffocating Villa very high up the pitch, man for man. And when the ball went over the top, if Levi wasn't there to win it, Fofana showed the pace in behind. And then he could, in possession, Levi could put his foot on the ball. And there were 3 options for him in midfield. There was Lavia, there was Caicedo, there was Enzo, and it allowed us to play through Villa. You know, sometimes we get one player in there and we end up with that island and there's one player in the middle and it's impossible to get the ball to him. Yesterday, because we were able to push more players into midfield and give ourselves that extra attack and that offensive edge, that allowed us to play through Villa so much easier. Going forward, we need to sign players that are willing to put in the donkey work. Yes, I agree with that. I think Maresca will be well aware of that type of player. You don't want too many players that would be considered a luxury player, especially in the way that Enzo looks like he's going to set his team up off the ball. You definitely need players with a little bit more about them in terms of work rate, desire, heart, passion, definitely. But what Chelsea have done well is sort of find a really good blend at the moment. Like players like Pedro Neto, they're willing to do the defensive work. Even João Felix loves to put in a challenge. Players like Cucurella, they've got the ability to be really technical and good and comfortable in possession. And then they can absolutely have the fight and have a battle as well. Because for me, Cucurella is probably one of the best left-sided defenders in the Premier League at this moment in time. Maybe in Europe. If I was a winger, I wouldn't want to play against Cucurella at the moment. He's an absolute nuisance. He always manages to just get a foot in and win the tackle and make it very, very difficult. And then when you think you've got him pressed and you've got him covered, he's disappeared into the center of the pitch and he's picking up the ball and he's making stuff happen. Very, very energetic. And for a while, we sort of, as Chelsea fans, thought that he was just a bit of a headless chicken. But actually, when a system's working and that energy is controlled, he looks brilliant. And I have to say that he is the type of player that, for me, the writing was on the wall. He was definitely sort of, his days were numbered at Chelsea. There was talks about him going out on loan. I think everyone had thought that we'd made a mistake signing him, and he just wasn't ready to let it go. He just wasn't ready to back down. And he's absolutely turned his career around at Chelsea. And I mean, the fans love him. His name was ringing out around the stadium. Every game for quite a period of time now. I would say he's been at around the 7 out of 10 as a bare minimum. He's been so good and very consistent. We're not going to speak about music, but yeah, definitely have a soft spot for that type of music. Up the Chelsea, honestly, looking very, very good, very comfortable. I have to say that is, without doubt, for me, Chelsea's best performance under Maresca. I don't know what you guys think. I don't know if you agree, but I know we were talking before that fixture, saying, I wonder what is Chelsea's best performance. Is it Brighton? Is it West Ham this season under Maresca? We haven't really had a game where we've all as a team looked fantastic. I think that was it, because it was against a higher quality of opposition than West Ham, a better quality than Wolves. We kept a clean sheet. Defensively, we looked so solid. Going forward as a team, I think we look fantastic. So for me, what I'm seeing right now is a Chelsea team that is a team. It's not individuals. It's not about individuals. And I think Maresca is picking players that are showing they're willing to work for the team. And the way we played, everyone's starting to know where people are going to be on the pitch. People are aware of what each other's roles are. And we are looking more like a team. And I have to praise Maresca a lot, because if you'd have told me when we hired a manager from the Championship in the summer that we would be sat above Manchester City, joint second place, and only behind Arsenal on the alphabet, I would not have believed you. I'd have said you're winding me up. And I have to praise him for that. Look, some results have been favourable around Chelsea. There's no doubt about that. Man City having the fall off they're having, Villa not being great this season, Tottenham having a really bad start, teams that finished above Chelsea last season not being great, Arsenal having a bit of a blip. But at the same time, Chelsea can only do what they've done and beat the teams that have been in front of them. And there's been, I mean, I think back to Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, games where we were a bit sloppy and mistakes were made with the management and players not being good enough. We're not seeing performances like that on a regular basis under Maresca anymore, but we were under Poch. And I have to say, that's where I think the improvement's there, because far too many times last season, we were speaking about poor performances with so much wrong. Yesterday, honestly, I don't really think there's anything to criticize off the back of that game. And I don't want to criticize. I want to praise. But for a lot of time, there was moments when you have to go, oh, come on, he's not doing that great. And even tweaks. But yesterday was how I want to see a Chelsea team playing. Yesterday's the type of football I want to see. The type of unified approach from a team I want to see. The way we played out from the back wasn't slow, wasn't lethargic, was precise, instructed, aware, build-up play. And that's what I want to see from a team. That I've said it before. Enzo Maresca views football in a way that I think when it works is how a lot of us want to see our team play. All right, there are moments when it can be slowed down and it can be a little bit boring, but the other team don't know what to do. And we saw that with Villa yesterday. They kind of sat there and was like, we don't know whether to press. We don't know whether to sit back and defend because we're 2-0 down and we don't know what to do here. And ultimately, Chelsea, you're in a position then to just control the game and be slow. And I've got no issue with that when you're 2-0 up. We found us doing that a lot last season when we were 0-0 or chasing a game. And that's when I have an issue because I feel like we're not taking the risk we need to, or we haven't put ourselves in a position to go and win the game. But right now under Maresca, we absolutely are. And yeah, look, Indigo's saying, let's not get carried away because we're playing Villa and they're depleted. But off the back of our rotation and European games, yeah, we've drawn a few, but the only game we'd won was Newcastle, and they were in a really poor run of form. But yesterday we beat Villa and we kept a clean sheet. And I still think that as much as Villa aren't in a good run of form, this is a side that have played Champions League football, got big results this season, beat Bayern Munich, been for quite some time now a team that are capable of challenging in and around the top 6, 7 in the Premier League. And I think it was a good test yesterday. No matter how you dress it up, Chelsea had to go and win that game. And ultimately, Villa didn't perform. And we were able to win it in a way that came across probably like we played better than what we played a team better than their current form suggests that what they are, right? Is what I'm trying to say, is that this Villa team were better 2 months ago than they are now. Yeah, I understand that, but we can't change that situation. And we've played teams worse than Villa and struggled this season. Palace haven't looked close to Aston Villa this season, and ultimately we struggled to beat them. Bournemouth, the same. But Bournemouth have been a good side this season, but nothing exceptional. We were lucky against them to get a win. And now we comfortably beat Villa at home, a place where it hasn't felt like a fortress. Like Chelsea's home form hasn't been fantastic. And yesterday felt like the type of performance that you should be putting in at home and make it a really tough place. And Unai Emery come out and said that this Chelsea team is levels above last season, physically, mentally, the way they're set up, the way they're playing. That is a Chelsea side that have made serious improvements compared to last season. I want to get onto the title race talking a bit because I know a lot of people from outside of Chelsea are starting to ask the question, are we in it? I think when I look at what Liverpool did to Man City yesterday, I have to say that we're probably not, because I don't think Chelsea are capable of doing that against Manchester City. I just don't think we would be. Even in City's current form right now, I'm not sure that we are, because City is still, they're in a really bad rut of form, but I still believe they're a good side. I think Liverpool could probably beat the majority of teams in the Premier League this season. I think that's what will make them probably the winners of the Premier League this season. If not, they'll be incredibly close. And I just don't think Chelsea are there quite yet. But let's see what you guys are saying. First of all, let's please beat Spurs and remainder of December games. I agree. Yeah, look, they are depleted. They're not the same Villa as last year. They're not the same Villa as they were 2 months ago, but they're still a good side. And there's far worse than Villa in the Prem. And we got a good result yesterday. Aston Villa do have physical players, right? I agree with that. And Chelsea definitely took the game to them. And where Chelsea take the game to these sides is the way we're able to do it all over the pitch. I think the way we are able to be physically competitive all over the pitch in terms of winning those battles in a lot of different areas. If it's our wingers, they're able to win against the fullbacks. If it's our striker, he's able to have the battle with their defenders. We're not the biggest side in the world, but we've got players with fight and desire at the moment, and players like Casado are coming out on top of battles against physical players, and big centre midfielders. And if they're not, and they're going out towards the winger, they're able to win that battle against a pacey winger because they're fit and they're dynamic players. And I think that's what we've done very well, is that Chelsea are able to go and have this battle all over the pitch with players that you look at and don't think they're physically imposing. In years of the past when we had like Matic and Ivanovic and massive physical players that, like, I think of Essien and players like that who you don't want to be playing against. Drogba's, you name it. Our team was always a pretty physical side. Whereas now we've probably got players that are more of a similar, or probably cut from a similar cloth to Kante, right? But Kante very rarely lost the battle. And I think our team now is probably more to that sort of side where we're very dynamic and we're very versatile. We're able to have that battle all over the pitch when the players are full of belief like they are. When this team wasn't full of belief last season, we weren't winning those battles, which was a huge issue. Update on Fofana. We don't know much yet. It looks like it's going to be 4 to 5 weeks, according to Maresca, off the back of yesterday. But I believe, with it being Wesley Fofana, I'll be surprised if he's back before that sort of break in January that comes up. I would think he's going to be a lot closer to Feb that we see him return. Just with his injury history and the precaution that Chelsea might take around him. I think we'll have to wait and see the news on that. Fingers crossed it isn't, because Matt said a little bit earlier on that he jogged back out of the tunnel, which would be really good to see. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was ever a good fit, Dan. I 100% agree with that. Yeah, we need to beat. We do, and Southampton will be a more difficult game than what the table suggests. Chelsea are in third, and Southampton are down towards the relegation zone or in it, and they've been battered by some teams this season. But some games, they've really made it difficult. And I look at Brighton. Brighton are a team that are not that far behind Chelsea in the league, and they just drew 1-1 on Friday night. And Southampton can be difficult to play against. I mean, a cold, windy, wet night on the south coast is not a favourable fixture. And it's not like you're going down there in the spring and it's a lovely day. That can be a difficult place to go. But I've also seen Chelsea in years gone by go away to Southampton and not struggle at all and be absolutely fantastic. And yeah, very important Chelsea go and get that win. A lot of people are saying, are we going to rotate in the same way that we've done for the Conference League? No, absolutely not. Cole Palmer and Nicholas Jackson wouldn't have come off in the minutes they came off if they weren't going to start this game against Southampton. They're going to play. They're going to start as long as they're fit and recover well. They definitely will. I expect to see actually not the same 11, but only a couple of changes. It'll be the most sort of realistic approach to rotation that I think we'll see Maresca make so far this season. I don't think you see 11 straight changes. I think you see 1 or 2, and this is the likes of maybe a Madueke plays. Maybe there's a rotation, obviously defensively, in terms of Fofana won't be starting the game. Maybe there's a rotation in midfield. Lavia might not play because you don't know how many minutes he can play. He's not in that squad for a reason in the Conference League, because they're trying to manage him and manage his injuries. We're on about potentially, I would say, maybe like a João Felix sneaks his way into the starting 11. But it'll be a very difficult game. But I think we'll do okay. Chelsea are playing on Wednesday. We are indeed. And you need a consistent goalkeeper and defence to win a title. We haven't quite got that yet. No, I agree. We haven't. And I think that'll be something that Chelsea work on. Sanchez had a good game yesterday. Didn't make too many mistakes. And ultimately, Chelsea are probably ahead of where most of us thought we might be at this point in the season. And if we're doing that with the issues that we've potentially got defensively and that we've seen with a goalkeeper that makes a lot of mistakes and defence that's not nailed on, imagine where we can be if we get those problems sorted. I'm really pleased with how things have been going for Chelsea recently. But look, guys, I've got to shoot. I've got a dentist appointment, and I'll catch you all in a bit. But look, absolute pleasure. Make sure to like the video if you haven't already. And look, we'll speak again before Wednesday, I'm absolutely sure. But subscribe if you haven't. We're on the road to 4,000 at some point in the season. I'll catch you all soon.